Good morning, everybody. Happy Saturday.
Good morning.
How is everybody today? How are you, Mir?
Oh, I'm great. To Saturday, I slept well. Everything's going okay. So
And
it's great. How about
it's
you?
it's Fright Files Saturday.
It
We should have
is.
done Fridays. We could have done Fright Files Fridays.
That's so true.
That's so funny. Um, Go ahead.
I would say you look so great with your
Oh,
makeup.
I'm very purple today, aren't I?
You are very
It
purple. I
total.
love it.
Go ahead.
I love it.
It totally wasn't intended either. Hi, Rowdy. Welcome.
Hi, Rowdy.
It totally wasn't intended. Like, I felt like I needed to do my makeup today. I just needed to be a little bit fresh, and I always wear the purple eyeshadow. And then I looked and I was like, okay, my headphones match my shirt and my sweater and my microphone. We're very purpley today.
Oh yeah, I love it. I personally I love purple. If I
Hmm.
could have purple hair, I would, but I think I'm just destined for the green.
I love purple too. I love green too. And as you can see, my walls are purple too. My lights are purple. Like, I'm very purple. Purple's my favorite. Anyway, hey Waka, how you doing? Welcome.
How are you doing?
Green and purple. I think green and purple go really well together.
Yeah, that might be my next hair. Because I right now I have green hair, so maybe I'll have purple and green
You
in the future.
should. I actually finally got my correct purple hair dye back, and I'm so excited because I don't have to do this like Merlot color anymore. So that's a new thing coming.
I like the Merlot color.
I did too, but I feel like it's really close to my natural hair color, and it was supposed to be like more purpley.
Oh, that's true. That's true. It's true.
So, anywho's, I hope everybody's having a great weekend so far. We are going to be discussing the different subgenres in the horror gaming field area. Whatever the word is, just totally flew out my head. It's fine. It's fine. Um, yeah, so that's what we're going to be doing today. I need more coffee, I think.
Oh yeah, I'm drinking a 20-ounce Red Bull, so I'm ready to party.
I need one of those. I had a monster the other day, and it was very lovely. Okay, so do you want to start us off, Mir?
Yeah, I was going to say that. So we're talking about the horror game subgenres, and we also will dip into their mechanics a little bit and like what makes a game fit into each category. But in our research, we did come across like we pretty much decided on just a few like really popular subgenres, and that was jump scare horror, reverse horror, psychological, survival, action, and mascot.
And I will say when so Mir did the research for finding the different types of genres, and when I saw the reverse horror game, I was very confused. So that was an interesting thing to learn about.
Yeah, it was because like when I saw reverse, I was like, wait, reverse. And so I had to look into because I knew what psychological was, I knew what action was, and all the rest. But
Yeah.
reverse, I was unsure about. I'm like, what
So that was fun.
count?
We learned
Yeah,
something new. That was kind of cool. So yeah,
yeah.
we did a lot of research on these, and we're going to talk about them. And you know, you guys are welcome to join in the conversation and let us know what you think. Um, and yeah,
We did have a big one that we wanted to talk to people about, which was we wanted to have a poll, but you guys can just put in the chat. So one of the games, Resident Evil 4, came up in multiple categories, but the big ones that it came up in was survival horror and action horror.
mhm.
And so I was curious what you guys thought. Do you feel like it's more action or do you feel like it's more
And
survival?
I can put up a poll real quick as well. But also, we don't have this genre on here because I didn't think of it till earlier. But there is some first-person shooters, horrors, which I also feel like Resident Evil 4 could fall into. We'll discuss all this, and I'll put up a poll real quick so that you guys can let us know what you think.
Yeah, because I'm curious. I mean, I would think that action and first person shooter could go hand in hand, but they are also different as well.
Oh, does it not let me do polls? Am I not allowed unless we're affiliate? That sucks.
Oh no, that's why I figured I would just throw it
Well,
across.
fine, no
See if
poll then.
not.
You guys just have to let us know in the chat then.
So RE is more puzzle survival, is what Rowdy says. Dead Space. So I do agree that Dead Space is an action to me as well.
But also, I think, and this is something Mira and I were talking about earlier, that Resident Evil, depending on the game, falls into different categories. Because Resident Evil 4, yes, there are some puzzles in it, but you're dealing with a lot more shooting accuracy, a lot more, you can do some combat in it as well. And then there's just, it's all kinds of, but puzzle horror definitely, I think, is, but when we go through, we talk about these different ones. We'll talk about why, like, it's survival horror as well, and why it's action horror as well. So it's interesting. Dead Space is definitely action based. Yes, I agree with that. So I guess we'll just get started in the first one, the jump scare horror games. This is something Mira and I had a huge conversation on earlier. We were talking last week how jump scares can be a really cheesy way to do horror, unless it's an intended game like in FNAF. And in Five Nights at Freddy's, you know you're going to get jump scared. But whether or not you get jump scared depends on how well you do at whatever activity is you're doing. So, for example, when I played it in VR and I did the parts and repairs, you're repairing Bonnie and you have to take her eyeball out. And if you take the wrong one out, she jump scares you. So you know you're going to get jump scared. And I really like the creativity in that, because it's whether or not you get jump scared depends on you.
I agree that was the appeal of Five Nights at Freddy's for me. Even the first one had, like, you were expecting a jump scare because you were looking at the cameras, you were closing doors, you were like trying to monitor like the power. So at the end, you were like, oh, I've been looking at the camera too long and now I can't close any doors. I'm about to get jump scared. That was the thing that was going to happen.
And then it's terrifying because, like, the whole screen goes black and you know it's coming. And in VR, it's even worse because they're literally in your face. So, like, but you know it's coming. The screen goes dark and you know it's coming, but you're not sure when, because they have that little delay for a few seconds. And then you're like, nope, I can do better next time. And you go back and you do it again. But I think it's a really creative way, even in Security Breach, where it's more story-based, you're trying to escape the Pizzaplex, you still have to be sneaky. And if you get caught by the animatronics, you get jump scared. So whether or not you get jump scared depends on you. And I think that was a really creative way of doing a jump scare game and not making it cheesy.
Yeah, I agree. And the jump scares in those games were more an indicator that you did something wrong, more than just a cheap jump scare
Right.
they would throw in randomly.
Right. And it made things tense too. Like every time, my son loves Five Nights at Freddy's, and every time I play it, he loves when I play it because I'm so tense and I'm like, we gotta do this. Like, I whisper, like, I'm like, we can't get caught. We have to be safe. He's like, Mom, they can't hear you. but yeah, it was a very creatively done game.
I do the same thing. I will whisper and I'll even start to like kind of move my head in different directions as if I'm actually hiding or keeping myself from something. So
Yes.
I totally get that.
Yep. So Waka said, in my opinion, jump scares can be quite cheap and can desensitize the whole atmosphere of a game or movie if done too much out of the premise. Like, oops, we need more jump scares, just throw in random jump scares with no payoff. I agree with that. I think in typical horror games, jump scares, like we talked about last week, jump scares should be something that they use sparingly. But in a game like Five Nights at Freddy's or even Poppy Playtime, where you know there's going to be a jump scare and it's dependent on how you perform, I think that is like an exception, if you will, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. Like, the jump scares end up being like, oh, you did this thing really good, so you'll be able to move on to the next stage.
Yes.
Like the same with Outlast. Outlast I definitely put into the jump scare category because even though people may not think that, it had so many jump scares, and if you failed any of them or didn't do something in like a really like finite amount of time or whatever, you would be boned.
Yeah.
You would die.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's like I said, the only exception to like jump scares. Like if you're playing a typical horror game, like even like Resident Evil, you're playing a typical horror game like Resident Evil, and you're getting these stupid random jump scares out of nowhere, and they make no sense with the story. It has to make sense with the storyline, otherwise, it's just it doesn't work, and it just becomes you like Waka said, you become desensitized to it. You might get startled, but you're not like on the edge of your seat afraid kind of thing.
Yeah, and Rowdy said that even false jump scares can be overused and they're better suited to bad comedies.
Yes.
I totally agree. There are some horror games that will put some jump scares in just randomly and you're like, why did I get jump scared right here? It was a way to create tension because they didn't know how to tell a story.
Yes.
That's how I feel.
Yep. Yeah, and that's why like I'm so mad that we don't have the podcast from last week because we do go over a lot of this in the podcast from last week where we talked about like you have to really be able to create a scary environment and use jump scares kind of like I look at it as like cooking, right? Like so it's just like the garnish on top, used very sparingly. It's not the whole meat of the game. That I personally have been working a lot in Unreal Engine about making a horror game, and my big thing I'm focusing on right now is the atmosphere. I don't care about the jump scares. I don't care about ghosts or monsters or anything. I'm like, how can I make this look as creepy as possible? You have to know how to make it look scary without using the cheap horror jump scares.
No, I agree because I'm also making a game. I think we're just both making a game right now.
We're just doing everything together. We're taking the same Unreal Engine courses, and I found them on Udemy, and I was like, oh my God, Mary, you need to get this.
Yeah, and I immediately signed up for the course because
it's so good too.
I'm also making a game, and jump scares, I'm thinking about jump scares, but I'm thinking about them only in relation to the story.
Yes.
They will never be random.
Yes, I agree. And, and as I was looking through this list of the different subgenres, and I was like thinking of the game that I'm making, like where would I put my game as well? Like what is exactly do I want to happen? I've changed my mind so many times on like what's going to happen in the game. I'm still building the hospital that it's going to be done in. So I'm like, as I'm building it, I'm like, I wonder if we should do this. I wonder if I should do this. And there's a lot to think about.
Yeah, and it's exciting because like so this kind of leads into what we're talking about. Since we're both making a game, it's like what subgenre would you put your game into? Because you don't have to do it, but it does help in the flow of where you want your game to go.
Right. Yeah. And it's weird because when you're planning the story, like you have, and it'll constantly change throughout the game development as well. And we have, we have a game dev coming on next week. Is he on next? I think he's on next week.
Yes.
Who will be talking with us about the game he's developing and all of that kind of stuff that I think is going to be releasing soon. So, it changes constantly as you're building stuff and you're like, oh, I'm going to do this. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, this would be better. So it's really hard to like kind of pinpoint, especially early on.
Yeah, and we're going to talk to him about his game, and I'm curious to see where he feels his game is going to fall into, like which category.
So, him and his brother, I think, are both going to be on because his brother is a co-dev with him. And when I was reading about his game, I was like, this is really, really interesting, because it was something that I hadn't really heard of being done before. So I'm very excited to talk with him about that. Do we get free codes next week? Well, you'll have to ask him. I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah, I wouldn't think so. I think we should support him.
Yes.
So
So
Yeah, his other game
I will
was
say that
good.
it is Mistiv that's coming on. I will finally announce it's Mistiv and his brother, whose name escapes me at the moment, because we had a huge discussion about his brother's name. But yeah, so but him and his brother, I believe, will be on, and he. I did 2 voiceovers in his Mirror Forge game, which was an amazing game, and he is now doing a game that is a underwater horror game, which I thought would be really cool. And that's the one that we're going to talk to him about next week. So that'll be really exciting. But, anyways, oh, it's Mistiff. He seems nice. He is super nice. Anytime I have any questions on anything, he's willing to help, and he's done some videos to help other people learn, how to code games and stuff. He's such a sweet guy, so I'm really excited that he'll be on as well.
Yeah, what's his new game called? Like Chasmal something?
Chasmal Fear, I think it's called, and it's a body cam. So instead of looking at it from the player's point of view, he's got a body cam on, and it's an underwater horror. So I thought, oh, that really sounds interesting. So him and his, I keep saying, I think his brother's going to be on with us, but I know Mister for sure will be on with us next week, and we'll talk to him all about that, and we'll even ask him what subcategory he thinks his game falls under.
Okay, that would be really exciting.
So, so we were talking earlier about the reverse horror games, and we didn't have any idea what those were. I was so glad I wasn't the only one. But those are games like Dead by Daylight, where it is not the dev's job to scare you, it's other players' job to scare you. And that is considered a reverse horror game.
Or you are the bad guy
Right.
in the horror game. So, like, I think that Carrion is a reverse horror because you are a abomination that is killing everything. I think people would even you could consider Amnesia a reverse horror because I think the main character that you're playing is a bad guy.
Right. Right. I didn't think of Amnesia being a reverse horror. That's interesting.
Yeah, I think it falls under it.
Yeah, I think it could definitely qualify as that. I know, like, I thought of it more of like a psychological horror, but I could see how it could be a reverse horror as well. Um, but yeah, so
Yeah.
go ahead.
I would say like Dead by Daylight, especially though, like that's the most obvious one because the others you could be like, oh, they could be other things, but Dead by Daylight
Yeah.
and Texas Chainsaw Massacre
Yes. Oh,
is
and
another one. Friday the 13th.
I was gonna say Friday the 13th. I was like, what is the name of that game? Yes,
Yeah.
Friday the 13th. Yes.
Yeah, all those games could definitely fall under it just because you're playing as like the serial killer.
Yes.
So
Yes.
yeah, it's reverse for sure.
And that's cool because then there's a different perspective because now you are no longer the protagonist trying to escape. You are now the antagonist trying to destroy everybody or whatever the case may be. And so it's really neat, like different perspective.
Yeah, and those games stress me out
Me
as
too.
the killer. Like they don't stress me out as the survivor or person trying to like just make it through. They stress me out as the killer. I do not like being the bad guy.
So they stress me out in both situations. I am terrible at both. I cannot escape, nor can I be the killer where I have to find people because I can't find them. And I get so stressed out because I don't know what I'm doing. I can't escape. I'm always dying, or I can't capture anybody. And so for me, it's not as scary as it is stressful.
Yeah, I kind of learned to deal with things as being the survivor because it's kind of like just a normal scary game. You have objectives you need to do, you have to find out how you're going to survive the whole ordeal. It's just a thing, but as the killer, I'm like, oh, I have to kill people and I have to
Yes.
prevent them from doing something.
It makes you
That's
feel like a bad
too much.
person. You're like, I don't want to do
Yeah.
that. Like, I don't want to hurt them. Like, I'm such a bad guy. I'm just like, I don't want to hurt anybody.
I feel the same. I'm such a bad guy. Like I even like playing games like Fable and things like that where you could be bad or like Baldur's Gate where you could be a bad guy.
Yes.
I'm so good. I'm a goody two shoes. Like I have to be so good.
And it's like in the choice games too, where you're like, oh, you could even in like the games that I was just playing on stream, the Dark Pictures Anthology, where it's like you could choose to like say a snarky remark, or you can choose to say something nice, and then I'm like, oh, I'm gonna be mean this time. I'm gonna say this, and then I feel guilty, and then I have to be nice again after because then I feel really guilty.
Oh yeah, in those games I do like I think it's called save scumming,
Uh huh.
where you save before you make a choice.
Uh huh.
So I will make the bad choice, realize that it went super south, or like they just hate me now. And
Yeah.
so I'll go back to my previous save, make the choice I wanted to make, which was the good choice, and go from there.
It's weird. I'm glad I'm not the only one who feels guilty, because I keep telling myself it's just a game. You don't need to feel guilty. These aren't, you're not really hurting anybody, but still, like, that part of me, I'm just not like that. I can't just be like really rude to somebody, or stick them up on a hook or something, like it's not me.
Yeah, knowing that it's a real person
That's
too
play.
gets to
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
It's
like, oh,
not a
I'm putting
bot.
a real person up there. Yeah. And then you have to worry about, like, especially in Dead by Daylight and all
Yep.
those other games, you have to worry about, are you tunneling? Are you just being a bad player? Because it's not just playing the game, because playing the game, like, oh, you just hook people. But no, you have to make sure you're not tunneling them. You're not focusing on just one character.
Yep.
And it's so stressful to me. I'd rather just play the game as a survivor and just go with that.
Yeah. Same. Um,
But I can tell that reverse horror is not our favorite genre. So I kind of want to go into our favorite one, which is
yes.
psychological
Yes.
horror.
We both love psychological horror games.
Yeah. I love it so much. I like because we were talking about this. We like the fact that like it's not something that you're seeing, it's kind of what you're not seeing that kind of scares you the most.
Hmm. Yeah, what your mind can create is probably far scarier than what any game developer can create, because if you really let your mind go, like what could be lurking in these shadows, what could be, or who's the bad guy, if you don't know who the bad guy is and you're trying to figure out everybody's a suspect.
Yeah.
Words. Everybody's a suspect, and like it really gets into your head. And I'm the same way with horror movies. I love psychological horror movies as well.
Oh yeah. Once they start showing the monster, then it kind of becomes like they can still do it and it can be done well, but when they don't show the monster and you're kind of like, "Oh, is it not actually a monster? Is it in their person's head?" Like,
And for me, with psychological horrors, I find that, yes, I can be scared of monsters and things like that, but what scares me the most is things that could actually be real. A little child terrifies the shit out of me. And I don't know if it's because I'm a parent, but when you see a young child that is evil or possessed or a ghost or whatever, for me, that's far more terrifying than a big, huge monster, because it's almost like you can relate it, like this could possibly happen. And for me, that's a lot more terrifying.
exactly. What I like about psychological horror is that you just you're never exactly sure what's happening. Like you might have things happening that your brain's trying to make sense of it, but is it actually happening? Is it all in your head? Is
Yep.
it just a weird memory? Is something messing with you? Like Silent Hill's a pretty big one. You never really know exactly what's happening,
Yep.
and this character's going through like turmoil that you're unsure, like where did it come from? How do they get out of it? Like you're at a loss the entire time, and you're really just trying to make it through.
Yes. Yep. And it really makes you doubt yourself too. And especially like if the character is dealing with some sort of trauma, that can make it a little bit more relatable to you. When psychological horrors are more like realistic, like I was saying, where like they're going through a specific trauma and you can relate to that, it makes it all the more intense. And then again, like I said, you're questioning everything. Like, is this in my head? I heard a noise. Could it be it's I love those kind of games. Yes, psycho
Yes,
horrors,
same.
100%.
Psycho horror.
100% psycho horrors. Yes, absolutely.
Identity is a good example for a movie. You are so right.
You know what? I totally agree with that.
Yeah. Like there's a lot of psychological horror movies.
Yeah.
Like was it yeah, is Identity the one that's in like the hotel or whatever? I think that's the
I
one.
think so. That's why I was like pausing for a second because I know I've heard of it. I'm trying to remember which one it is. Yeah, it is. Okay. Yeah. I also like the motel. Yes, yes, the motel. I also like this, so I am huge into like you guys probably know this already, huge into ghosts and the paranormal. So when they do psychological kind of ghost type things like The Conjuring, scared the crap out of me. And there's a huge joke in my family now of doing the hide and clap. My husband loves to tease me on that because I was like, swear to God, if something ever claps back, I am out. We're moving out. We're done. But even in gaming, adding the paranormal and supernatural to the psychological, I think is just amplifies it so much more. But going into that, the other thing is the two other ones are um the survival and the action horrors, because these two are oftentimes combined together. Again, another example is Resident Evil will often combine these two together.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like that's where we actually had this conversation before about action horror versus survival horror with Resident Evil specifically.
Yes, because survival horror is a lot of, you have limited ammo, you have limited weapons, you have limited health, and you're trying to get what you can, make it last as long as you can, and get out of or escape apocalypse or whatever it is that you're trying to do. And there's not a whole lot of combat. But with the action horror, it's more combat than survival, but oftentimes the two will be combined together, like in Resident Evil.
And that's personally why I don't like Resident Evil. I know that we're different because you love Resident Evil.
It has, I have a
I'm
soft spot for it. It was my first horror game.
my first horror game was actually it wasn't even Silent Hill. It was Clock Tower 3
Mm-hmm.
was my very first horror game. And that is definitely survival. You only have one thing, and that's the lavender water that you can throw at the serial killers.
Yep.
But besides that, you can't even hurt them really with it. You just stun them so you can get away.
Right. Yeah.
So that was my first one.
Yeah, that I haven't played it. I have heard of it. And it sounds very stressful. But
It's so stressful, especially like the first killer.
yeah.
Like, because your name's Alyssa. He's like, Alyssa.
Oh my God, I would be
And-
freaking out. Like, what? It wasn't me, I swear. It wasn't me.
yeah, he's just saying that like the whole time. And he's trying to get to you and he's saying your name and he's chasing you. And you also have a fear meter or it's a panic meter rather. So like as he gets closer and closer to you, you develop panic. And if you panic too much, you can't hide. You can't do anything. All you can do is just flail around.
You know, it's so funny because I was working with a dev a while back on a game that I wanted to make, and it fell through. I'm no longer working with that dev. But one of the things that I said to him is everybody does the insanity. Like, you go insane. I want to do like panic and fear. Like, you have 2 meters, you have a panic and you have a fear meter, and you have to keep those low. And it's so funny because I have never played Clock Tower, so I had no idea that that was a thing. But I knew everybody did the insanity thing, so I kind of wanted to do something different.
Oh yeah. Yeah, you could I would suggest at least checking that game out. just to
Yeah.
see like if you can emulate it, because it's one of my favorite games.
Yeah, I'll definitely check it out. I've been totally looking for new horror games to play because I have a ton of games and I've either played most of them or decided not to play. So, uh, well, like I says, technically my first was Parasite Eve, and it scared me so much I didn't play horror till Silent Hill 2 a few years later when I really got back into it. I haven't
Hey,
heard of Parasite Eve.
I put Parasite Eve on the list. It's
Oh,
in
it
our
is there.
notes. It's in survival horror. I
Oops.
also Parasite Eve was one of my first games too. So technically the very first game I ever watched was Parasite Eve. Then the first game I played was Clock Tower 3. Then I played Siren, then Haunting Grounds, then Silent Hill 3, then Rule of Rose, Kuan, and then I played Silent Hill 4.
Well, you know,
I
it's
think is like the range.
I play so when Resident Evil came out, first game came out, I was 13. And that was the first game I played. And I played a lot of Resident Evil, but I also played a lot of like Tomb Raider, Crash Bandicoot, that kind of thing. And I did horror on and off for a while, and then when I got into streaming and I found out about Faz, I started playing that, and I started playing that in VR and was absolutely terrified, and now it's one of my favorite games, and now I just play all kinds of different kind of horror games, and I really it's not so much that I like to be scared, it's that I like to um I really like to see how these games play out, how you can, you know, survive during while being afraid, while being, having your adrenaline up and everything like that. I find that is just a lot more exciting to me.
I agree. Well, there are games that you have to be really good at,
Hmm.
and there are games like these games, like these horror games, you don't have to be great at video games to play them. That's what I kind of
Yep.
like. That's the appeal to me.
Yeah, I'm terrible at games.
Yeah.
I get stuck on stairs. I get stuck in plants and between coffee tables and couches, and I get stuck everywhere. So I'm glad I don't have to be good at it because
Yeah, I'm the same way. And Silent Hill is also like a survival horror, so you don't have to attack everything. You can survive and just go around things or sneak past things. Like
mm,
that's what I like about horror games. Like you're given an option. You don't always have to like just attack everything.
I was even too scared to play games like Quake and Half-Life as a kid. Half-Life as a kid. Half-Life is good.
I didn't even know about Half-Life as a kid. I played Spyro. So
I played Crash
that was
Bandicoot
my
and
game.
Tomb Raider, and I remember
Yeah.
my mom coming into my room one time, and I was playing Tomb Raider, and I again showing how terrible I am at games. I was trying to make her jump to something, and she kept hitting the wall, and she kept going oof. And so my mom is like, "What are you doing to this poor woman?" It's like, I'm trying here. Give me a break. That was even back when I was a kid. um,
Oh no. Yeah, 'cause there is that appeal that you don't have to be like especially good at
yes.
video games. I like the fact that you're just surviving. So it is like we talked about this in the last podcast with Bikini, but horror games being a way to get through trauma and to get through anxiety, I do feel like it's helped me get through a lot of stuff. Like
It's like
getting through a horror game, yeah.
it's like a controlled environment where you can be allowed to feel your fear and almost conquer it because you're in a controlled environment. It's interesting.
Exactly. Yeah, you're in a controlled environment, so you don't have to like you almost don't have to worry about it. Like there's going to be an end. You
Hmm.
just need to get through it
Hmm.
and it'll be there and you'll survive and it'll be actually like typically a good ending. Some horror games have bad endings as their like standard ending, but most have good endings as their good ending.
Well, this is something that I talk about with my son a lot because my son has a lot of anxiety, separation anxiety disorder. He has regular generalized anxiety, but he absolutely loves horror games, and I'm the same way. I have anxiety as well, and I love horror games. And I think, like you said, it allow it's going to end. It allows you to face your fears. And I was telling him about this too. It's like you're going to get through this, and it's almost like a not a coping, but almost it's almost therapeutic. How was Pong your first horror game?
Yeah.
I
Was it
remember
because you
Pong.
were so bad at it? Was that it?
I was afraid to let the ball like to not like hit it. Um and then on our list we have the mascot horror using franchise characters.
That's the one I wanted to talk about because it's the most recent. Like, yeah, sure, like there have been some in the past, but it has been out the wazoo
It
like
has, and
recently.
again, this is what these are games my son absolutely loves. So Poppy Playtime. There's one called Garden of Banban where it's the kindergarten. It takes place at a kindergarten. All the kindergartners have disappeared, and these weird monsters are in the kindergarten. It's very strange, but that's also because the monsters are things that the kids have drawn. And then there's FNAF, and it's just this has become a huge. And I often wonder if FNAF is what put Chuck E. Cheese out of business. Because shortly after FNAF came out, at least in my area, Chuck E. Cheese went out of business.
I mean, I wouldn't. I think that Chuck E. Cheese has been going out of business for a
But
while,
it was just
but
ironic because people were like,
yeah.
my son was like, I don't want to go to Chuck E. Cheese anymore. It's like that's fine by me, but yeah, it
Yeah.
was the animatronics at a pizza place. They have turned evil, and yeah, I wouldn't want to go either.
I mean, it makes the adults want to go. The thing
Yes,
that I think is that you can't go to Chuck E. Cheese anymore unless you have a child.
yes,
And then FNAF came out and there was all these animatronics. And so like me personally, I do want to go to
hmm
Chuck E. Cheese now,
and
but I
I
can't go.
go ahead.
I can't go. That's all. I can't go because I don't have a kid.
And I think that's really stupid. My mom, when she was working near a Chuck E. Cheese one time, and her coworker wanted to go over there for pizza for lunch, and they wouldn't let her in because they didn't have a kid. And I think that's so stupid. Like you're turning away customers because they don't have a kid. Like why can't an adult go? That doesn't make any sense to me. And they could have really banked off this whole FNAF thing. I think I think they really could have played into that.
They really could have. Because like I said, I now want to go to a
hmm
Chuck E. Cheese. I've actually never been to a Chuck E. Cheese, but I want to go now.
I used to take my kids all the time. All the ones near here, just they're closed now. So, yeah, can't go anymore. Now you got to go to Dave's and Buster's, and they don't have animatronics. So,
Oh, Waka, you only went once as a kid.
yeah.
Yeah, I never went. Like we didn't have Chuck E. Cheese in my hometown. We like didn't get a pizza place until I was like 15 and they didn't have animatronics. They just had like the mascot was a pizza, like a pizza slice.
Oh, that's funny.
And that's it. So there was no pizza slice walking around or anything.
We took my kids for their birthdays a couple of times. My daughter, when she was younger, she's 3, 4 years old. She's 14 now, and I remember the first time I took her, she was terrified of Chucky when he came out to sing Happy Birthday. And I had to hold her in my arms the whole time. He was
Oh
singing because she
no.
was terrified. It was so funny. But then she wanted to go back the following year, so I was like, all right, that's weird. Reddy says we still have one. We went to play video games before it was even a Chuck E. Cheese. It was a celebration station.
Huh.
Why does that sound familiar? Was that a national thing? Because I don't think I've ever been to one, but it sounds really familiar. But yeah, so these devs are now banking off of these kids places, these animatronics. Poppy Playtime is another one, where you're in a toy factory, and then you've got Garten Banban where you're in a kindergarten, and all of the monsters are characters that are geared towards children's media, which is really interesting.
Yeah, no. Mascot horror in the past few years has gone insane. There have been so many games that have come out for it. I personally don't like mascot horror.
Yeah,
I like FNAF, but FNAF's like the OG.
yeah, and I've played Poppy Playtime and Garten Banban. I'm not a huge fan of them. I play them because my son likes them. And he's like, Mom, you have to play this. And I'm like, do I have to? But I think they are geared a little bit more towards children. And it's amazing now how many children play horror games. Like my son is on the VR right now, and he plays a lot of horror games in VR as well. It's so amazing to me how a lot of these horror games now get geared towards children as well.
I know.
And I've had a lot of people tell me, "Oh, well, he's got anxiety because he plays horror games." I'm like, "No." That's not why.
No, that's the only reason we're getting through the anxieties that we're playing horror games.
And people that don't have it don't understand it.
Yeah, people that do not have anxiety will play a scary game and get anxiety from it. And that's something that like my past relationship, we had a huge argument about, is that he was like, "Why do you play scary games when you have anxiety?" And I'm like, no. I play horror games because I have anxiety.
Exactly.
It gets me through it. And plus it's fun to get like, it's fun to go through something scary and then to come out the other side. It's like a haunted house, you know, like it's very controlled. You're going to get through it. It's fine.
I went to a haunted house recently. Six Flags does at around October. They do a Fright Fest, and went through this haunted house with my kids, and I was never more terrified. I didn't think we were going to get out of there. And there were people that were literally like hidden in the walls that would jump out. You had no idea when they would come out. It was so dark in there, and my daughter was in front of us, and then it was my husband and my son and then me. So I was at the end, and at one point I felt like I was being followed, and I turned around. There was this person on stilts that was like hovering over me, and I thought I was going to lose my mind. I was like, let's get out of here. I don't want to do this. I was terrified.
Yeah. Okay. So we're saying that. So Waka, you also have anxiety issues sometimes, but you love horror. It is getting through it on your own terms. That's what I like about horror. Every genre that we've talked about kind of goes into that, like, you're going through something scary on your own terms.
Yes. That's kind of what I meant with it's like a controlled environment. You know, you're facing your fears in your own way in the controlled environment where you know that physically you're safe, but you're able to confront these fears that you typically have, which is again why I love the psychological horrors.
That's also why I love psychological horror. So I was curious. We have like 15 minutes left. I wanted to talk about, like, so we love psychological horror.
We do.
And we kind of talked about it, but like what is your favorite game of all time?
Ooh, that's a hard one. So I do love my Resident Evils. There is a game that I played in VR, and I don't know if it's classified as horror though. It was an absolute amazing game. It was called Half-Life Alyx. It was definitely an action game, but it might be horror too. That's an amazing game. But I don't know what my favorite horror game would be.
Oh, wow. Not a favorite horror game. Okay.
I'm trying to think. I have so many favorites is the problem.
I mean,
There's so many I like.
I have a favorite of all time, which is Silent Hill 3. I still want to get Robbie the Rabbit tattooed on my arm from the Silent Hill games.
So I've never played Silent Hill.
He's actually a mascot for the theme park that's in Silent Hill.
Oh, okay.
He's a bunny.
You know, Waka just said Silent Hill 3 is the best, and I know you were talking to me about that earlier before the podcast. So Silent Hill 3 is your favorite, right?
Silent Hill 3 is my favorite of all time. I have played that game multiple times. And I normally, like, I'm also not someone that plays games multiple times. Yeah. I'll play a game and I'm like, all right, I got it. And I've played that game probably 3 times now, which for me is a lot. I know other people, when they say something's their favorite, they've played it like 80 times, but 3 times for me.
So
is a lot.
the game that I've played the most over and over and beaten it over and over and over again is Resident Evil 7. That one is my absolute favorite as far as that goes, and in playing it in VR is absolutely amazing. But like a favorite horror game of all time, I don't know, because like I have so many favorites, and I don't know if I could think of a favorite horror game of all time aside from Resident Evil. There's so many good ones. I think.
So we've come across that you like. So you're just like me. You like psychological horror the best.
I do.
So,
and some of these games that are
Yeah.
mentioned, I have never played before, so they could end up being one of my favorites if I ever play them. To start making a list.
Oh yeah, we'll have to make a list. We'll have to play them.
Some of them I started to play, like Alien Isolation. I started to play and I never finished. We were talking about this before stream, and I'm probably gonna get booed for this a lot, but I was not a huge fan of Amnesia. I played a little bit of it, and I just couldn't get into it, and I just stopped playing it. And I've heard so many people like rave about Amnesia, and I just can't get into it.
I'm the same. Yeah, we talked about this. So Amnesia it's a game that I've wanted to get into so bad because it's on the list of so many game lists, like, oh, you should play this game. If you love horror, you should play this game. But that's where we'll talk about this in another podcast because we're talking about accessibility. But accessibility needs to be a thing in that game.
Yes.
The flashing bright white light when you have a memory hurt my head so bad.
Yeah.
I couldn't play the game. When you go insane and your vision goes so blurry and you're like kind of get woozy and a little head bob action goes on, I couldn't play the game.
Yeah.
I couldn't play it.
And I think that's something that a lot of devs don't think about. And that's, like I said, we'll talk a little bit with Mistiv about that, but we also have somebody coming in on the third who's we're going to be talking all about accessibility with her. I hear I need to play Soma. So I've heard that too. I heard Soma is really good, and I have not played that.
Soma, I started, is super good. I highly recommend it. I don't know how it is in a normal game. I'm playing on like the friendly mode where the monster can't kill you. So just take that with a grain of salt. I like the game as I played it.
You like this, so you like the story so far then.
I love the story. The story is so good that I could not care less about the things that are trying to kill you.
Dead Space or Faz for me, original RE2 makes the list. RE2 was really good. Dead Space was pretty good. I never made it all the way to the end of Dead Space, but what I did play of it was really good. I have a really bad habit of not finishing games. My attention span is just like not there.
Mine's not there either. I watched Waka play Dead Space, and so if you want to see someone play a game where they don't seem scared at all, you should watch Waka because he seemed so brave. It was so good. I was like, I cannot believe you didn't jump at that part. That was so crazy. Like things would just hop out of the vents.
Yeah.
And he wouldn't be phased.
I have this thing where when I played Alien Isolation, the alien does that occasionally. Will like pop out of vents and stuff, and I'm just like, "Hi, how you doing?" I may jump, but like I oftentimes will talk to them, like, "Hey, how you doing? Nice to see you. Thanks for jumping at me. I appreciate that." Or stop breathing, like fast. Stop breathing in my ear. Didn't appreciate that. That's how I deal with it. I talk to them. If the game can be tense and scary even when the monsters can't kill you, then it's a great mark for a horror game. Absolutely.
You get chills down your spine, but nothing gets you to scream yet. Man,
we're gonna have to find a horror game that makes you scream then, Waka.
That's been my life goal. Also, poor Waka has heard me scream because I scream. I don't just like react like I'm like, I will do a horror movie scream, and I swear his eardrums have to be like I don't know.
I will say
ruined.
I'm a lot like Waka. I don't usually scream during horror games. I might jump. I might be like, oh my God, or something like that. I don't typically scream during horror games.
No, I do. Like Waka says, I have a horror movie scream.
I love it. I need to hear this sometime. We need to play some horror games together sometime.
So the best way to hear it is if you play Escape the Backrooms, something like that. Escape the Backrooms will probably get it more than anything else.
Good to know.
And because like Faz, I will scream and then I'll go right back into what I was doing. I'll be like, and then I was doing this,
Yeah.
But
and I actually
yeah.
have been playing Death Watchers recently, which is kind of a combination between Faz and Observation Duty, and that game has scared the crap out of me a couple of times. And especially when I didn't really know what I was doing. I've been in the Discord, I've been talking with the dev, asking questions and figuring out how to play the game. The dev is super nice. And had a couple of successful missions so far, and that game definitely will scare the crap out of me occasionally. There's nothing like a monster suddenly appearing, crawling on the wall or crawling on the ceilings to scare the crap out of you.
Terrifying. Yeah.
But anyways, yeah, so those are the most popular subgenres of horror games and their mechanics.
Yes. So I do feel like we got through a whole bunch of things this go around.
We did.
Yeah, we
covered a lot. This hour and the hour, I'm going to tell you guys, like, before stream, we're sitting there like, I hope we have enough to talk about, and then the hour just flies by, and we're like, wow, it's almost time to go now.
Yes, I could talk for like 2 to 3 hours.
Me
too. We could have gotten way more involved in it, but an hour to be so vague, you just gotta
Yes, it is hard to get it all done in an hour. Maybe we need longer podcasts.
Maybe eventually.
We'll get there. Maybe we'll do some bonus, streams at some point.
We do want to do some bonus streams eventually because we do want to eventually hit affiliate.
Yes, and in order to do that, we have to have 7 streams within a 30-day period, and streaming once a week, we can't do that. So we might, as we get closer in followers, we might do some bonus streams for you guys.
Yes, exactly. Might play some Faz, might play some Death Watchers. Who knows?
Ooh, that would be fun.
I cannot play that game. It's too spooky.
The only thing that I would say with that game, and I've mentioned it to the dev, is he has like no settings on there. Like, you have a couple of like screen resolution and stuff, but there are no other kinds of settings, and I've talked to him about that. So hopefully he will take that to heart. We'll see.
Oh yeah, for sure. All right. Well, we are reaching the end. I was looking for someone that we could raid out to.
Mm-hmm.
There's someone. I'm gonna post it into a DM with you.
Okay.
They are currently playing Death Watchers.
Oh, perfect.
It's called Cascadens. I don't know how to say the name.
Okay, cool. Let's so we are going to raid out. Please make sure that you say hello to this streamer. We are trying to support other horror streamers, and as well as get our podcast name out there. So please make sure that you say hello and chat with them. We don't expect you to follow them or anything like that. Just pop in and say hello. Oh, there they are, Death Watchers. All right, yeah, so we're going to go ahead and raid out to them. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Next week, we will have Mistiv on talking about his new game that is going to be released soon.
Yeah, and this is a hedgehog PNG tuber or VTuber, it looks like, so
that's cool.
This should be pretty fun.
That's cool. I'm actually kind of excited to see somebody play Death Watchers now that I've had a few successful runs and I understand it better. It's gonna be exciting. All right, guys, thank you so much for being here. We will talk to you next week.
Yeah, thank you. Bye.